One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Jacobs. Welcome to the Sales Hacker Podcast. Today on the show, we've got Mykal White. Mykal is the owner and the CEO and the founder of a consulting business called NUNDA. And it's a really interesting conversation just about using real human English language and being your whole authentic self in the context of a sales cycle and how that can really drive outcomes for you as it has for Mykal. So I really like her honesty. I really like the conversation. I got a lot of value out of it. Now, before we get there, we want to thank our sponsor. We've got two sponsors on the show today. Sapper Consulting is the first one. Sales enablement's easy. All you have to do is create perfectly targeted content, stay informed on email best practices, drive more engagement quarter over quarter, spend less money, and do it all with less time. Okay, it's not that easy. But Sapper Consulting has built Regie with one G, Regie, to keep the promise of sales enablement and help carry the load. Regie uses artificial intelligence to create entire outbound, inbound, and even follow-up sales campaigns faster. Using over 1 billion rows of performance data across 75 industries, Regie uses your targeting to inform your campaigns, decreases the time your team spends creating campaigns, and because the campaigns are structured on email best practices, your campaign warm-up period will shrink the result, more sales meetings, which means more money. So start creating better sequences faster. Go to go.regie.io with one G. Our second sponsor is Outreach, the number one sales engagement platform. Outreach revolutionizes customer engagement by moving away from siloed conversations to a streamlined and customer-centric journey. Try saying that at a cocktail party and see what kind of looks you get. Leveraging the next generation of artificial intelligence, the platform allows sales reps to deliver consistent, relevant, and responsible communication for each prospect every time, enabling personalization at scale previously unthinkable. Check them out at www.outreach.io. And if you want to join Revenue Collective, I'd be remiss if I didn't say go to revenuecollective.com. We're about to launch our fall CRO school for people that aspire to be chief revenue officers of companies up to 50 million in revenue. So kind of Series A, Series B startup stage companies. We're going to teach those VPs of sales, those VPs of marketing, how do you become a great CRO? How do you negotiate for that job? How do you interview for that job? How do you get started on the right foot? And what are the basic skills that you need in order to be effective? So revenuecollective.com, click apply now. And without further ado, let's listen to my conversation with Mykal White. Hey everybody, it's Sam Jacobs. Welcome to the Sales Hacker Podcast. Today on the show, we've got Mykal White. Let me tell you a little bit about Mykal. Mykal began her sales career on a team where she was one of only 3 women selling to C-level executives on Wall Street. Following the economic downturn, she left the financial services space and went on to become one of the leading salespeople at tech companies like Yelp and LinkedIn. At Yelp, Mykal broke countless records, received a promotion after month 1, coached 40% of the sales team, and was constantly and consistently awarded for quota-breaking performance. Having developed a highly successful track record at sales, Mykal has simultaneously coached hundreds of people on an individual and group basis. Some of her company clients include Infor, Adobe, LinkedIn, ClassPass, Oracle, and Fiserv. Mykal is now the principal consultant with NUNDA, an executive coaching, sales, and leadership training company that focuses on working with individuals and teams to develop the skills needed to attain their targets. Mykal, welcome to the show.
Hello, Sam. Thank you so much for having me.
We're excited to have you. So we always start with a baseball card, even if nobody plays baseball, including right now, because there's no baseball season. But we want to learn a little bit more about you. So Mykal White, you are the principal consultant at NUNDA. I read the description, but I want to give you an opportunity to explain and describe what NUNDA does. So what does NUNDA do?
Sure. And thank you for that. So NUNDA is a coaching company, sales training, coaching, leadership development, but our focus is really on the other side of life as an executive or an owner, an entrepreneur, just because both sides really do need to be fed. I often say all the metrics in the world isn't going to make that person know what to do when they get that person on the phone or that prospect is standing in front of them. So it's really about sort of aligning all of those things, both the professional and the personal. So I guess in a nutshell, we help executives to develop the skills and behaviors that can't really be quantified, but they still need in order to be effective and successful.
Interesting. Okay. So, and what are some examples of those behaviors that you found really help executives, drive towards success?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, absolutely. So many things. I'm not even sure where I should start with that one. You would be surprised, Sam, how many executives struggle with the word no. They struggle with creating boundaries. They struggle with the word no. That creates a whole other host of problems, as you can imagine, right? When there's no sort of line that's drawn and you're kind of taking all these things on. And that's also coming down to over-promising with clients oftentimes. A lot of other things are just around communication. People often, so if the golden rule is treat others how you want to be treated, well, then there's a sort of a platinum rule, which is treat others how they need to be treated. But with communication, we tend to communicate with people that remind us of ourselves. And we struggle when people receive or consume information differently than we would understand. So just even little things like that, that just kind of get in the way of being effective and moving conversations and deals and success along.
Well, I certainly agree with you that saying no for me in my life has been a problem, and it does. My instinct is, anytime somebody reaches out to say, absolutely, let's set up a call, and then sometimes I approach that call and realize that I'm not quite sure why we're going to be speaking or what I should what I should do about it.
Wait, Sam, can I add, is it okay for me to ask, what was the time that happened that got you to finally stop doing that? What happened?
Oh, it hasn't stopped yet. It has not stopped.
Fair enough.
I have a great fear of being disliked. And I feel like if somebody reaches out and I say, I actually don't want to speak to you, I need to find a more diplomatic way of saying it, but I'm just nervous of appearing aloof or self-important, so I give my time to as many people as I can, which sometimes is a good thing because there's a lot of serendipity in having these conversations, but sometimes it's not. But nevertheless, this is not about me, Mykal.
It can be.
This is about you. So let's figure out, where you're from and how you got into running NUNDA. Tell us a little bit about your background and how'd you get here and how did you decide to launch this coaching business?
So I would say that as stories go, my real origin story started during my time at Yelp. Yelp was just completely pivotal. It was a game changer in my life. It was the first time that I recognized that I could make a ton of money simply being myself, building authentic client relationships. Authentic meaning that I'm not just telling the client everything that they want to hear. I learned the power of sort of applying a more of a pulling sales approach versus pushing, how powerful that can be. There were just so many amazing takeaways for me in that time. But it was, I think, the most powerful one of all was just about the importance of showing up as myself, not trying to be or sound like anyone else other than myself. And it was really interesting, Sam, because when I first started at Yelp, there were, maybe 40 reps. When I left, there were closer to 900. And constantly, people would come over to me and they would Mykal, what is your secret? What is your secret? And I would tell them and they would never, ever believe me, because I think it was just too simple for them. And all I would say to them is take all of this delicious training, because Yelp's training was phenomenal. Take all of this amazing training and just filter it through all that you are. Literally be everything that you are. Just apply the training, apply all the things that you've learned. That's all I did. And they were like, no, come on. So it's it has to be something other than being ourselves. But that was the lesson I learned. So that was my origin story. And it has allowed me to be incredibly successful everywhere I've been since and sort of carve my own path everywhere I've gone, because I understand that comparison really is the thief of not only joy, but success.
Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. Comparison is the thief of joy and success. Explain that.
Sure. So if you think about it, right, think about during the interview process. We don't have any insight into anyone else that's applying. So we show up. We have no choice really, but to show up as our best selves. We are just this is the job. I should have this job. We're our most confident selves. We can articulate. It's very clear. We beat out Like for every one job posting, there's hundreds of applications that this company is receiving, any company. So we forget that to get that offer, there were hundreds of people that we're not even aware of because they chose us for a reason. Something really interesting happens. We get the job, and then we sort of all morph into this sameness, where as we're ramping or as we're like finding our way, we start looking around at the people to our left and right, and we start to try to emulate them instead of remembering that we're hired specifically because we're not them. They already have them. We were hired for us. And being us is actually the competitive advantage of the company, because the competitors don't have an us. We're busy trying to sound like everyone else, which is, so we're comparing instead of like standing in what is like uniquely our power and our strength and our attributes. And it is what steals our joy, because then we're basing everything on what others are doing. And all of it is coming from outside of ourselves. Does that make sense? So it steals our success. It steals our joy. It steals everything.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's hard to do. Let's say you are coaching a client and you're giving this feedback, which I think is great feedback and great guidance. And they say, you know what, Mykal, I don't know how to be more myself. I wasn't aware that I wasn't being myself. Do you have exercises or thought processes or guidance for people on how to discover that authenticity in the workforce?
I do. And that's actually one of the ways that I do a lot of work with the leaders that we're working with is role play. Role play is an incredibly underutilized, powerful tool, because I could tell you, or we could actually work it out together. And that awkwardness, that uncomfortable, like ick, it's supposed to be that way because you're pushing through it. And the more that you're pushing through it, the more that you're comfortable with being yourself. But it's better to work that ick out with me than a prospect or a client.
Interesting. What are some how are people different, I guess, in your experiences as you help them work through their ick?
What do you mean by different?
I mean, I'm just interested in like the qualities of differences. Like when somebody says, okay, I've discovered something about myself, like what are some examples of things that people discover about themselves that they can then bring into the workforce?
Yeah. So one of the big ones, people will use these words. So I'm sure that you've been doing this a long time, Sam. There's sort of words that salespeople tend to use that they don't use in their everyday life in conversations with friends and family. So one thing is they'll be saying things, or if we're role playing and I'm like, all right, so let me hear your language. And they're like, does this resonate with you? And I stop them because I'll say, well, we've been talking for 3 months. I've never heard you use the word resonate. Is that a word that you would use? And it's like, no. And it's like, well, how would you put this? Just talking to me, just explaining to me, just asking me. We're in a coffee shop and I'm like, hey, what do you do? It turns out I happen to sort of be your ICP, and you're just like talking to me as a person as you're waiting for your coffee. How would you put that? And then they think about it, and then they do it again. And we keep working on it until it feels natural, or I will help them to create a script that is their words, but it's like the company's messaging is in the DNA of that script, but it's all them. But everyone is different. So, it could be lots of things. It could be people that have a great sense of humor that are afraid to use it. And I'm like, where are you? Where are you? I'm missing you. Where are you in this? And they hide that part because they think there's no place for it, because they're all buttoned up now because they're, that they're wearing their inside sales hat. And I'm like, but that's silly. You were hired because your personality is fantastic. Why in the world would you not be yourself and use that sense of humor? Or there are some people that are not funny, but because they misunderstand, rapport and empathy, they're trying to be what they're not. And I'm like, but don't. Like, you're not funny. It's okay to not be funny. Just be you. But we just have to get you more comfortable dealing with and speaking to the 75% of the market that isn't like you and doesn't communicate like you do. But be you, be yourself.
I think those are great examples. And thank you for sharing them.
Sure.
One of the things that you've mentioned, you feel like emotional intelligence and empathy are buzzwords, but a lot of people don't understand how to be emotionally intelligent. Walk us through your framework for how to help people tap into their emotional intelligence.
I love that you asked me that question the way that you did, because the answer is it's practice. It's not a TED talk that you watch and you're like, oh, so this is empathy. This is what empathy feels like. I've heard about you. No, it's practice. You have to continue to work it out. You have to continue to put yourself in these situations where you can test yourself and you can see how far you've come. So whether it is being able to listen more empathetically, or sometimes it's about listening empathetically and realizing, like, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. I know I'm supposed to be empathetic right now, but like, I'm stuck. I have no idea what to say. To have, like, that's how we work with clients as well, right? So to be able to have a place to go to discuss the situations just like that, where you're like, I don't know what I was supposed to say. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And to talk about it and to provide a little bit more perspective about that one thing, that's how you put it into practice. It's like a muscle, and the fact that sales, like we all say, or everyone says, or we all know that sales it's a people business. It's all about relationships. We hammer this constantly, but then we don't give people, or companies don't invest as often as they should in ways to train, coach, develop those sides of selling, which is, empathy and how internal triggers and assumptions, how not to let these things impede our success. I mean, we are people after all, with our pesky humanness.
When you're sharing these ideas and these insights, which I agree with, what are some of the objections that you commonly hear, and what's your response to people that say, that's all well and good, Mykal, but I actually do want my salespeople to behave all the same, and I do want them to be extremely consistent, because I'm trying to build a scalable revenue machine. And I read Mark Roberge's book, The Sales Acceleration Formula. Mm-hmm. And he said, hire all of the same types of people with the same qualities that we found to be successful in our company, and then train them the same way and give them the same leads and have them run the same sales process, and mm-hmm. they'll produce the same results. What's your response to that?
My response to that is hooey. Is my response to that, because
That's a great response.
Yeah, I mean, it's very mature, because so we're not the Stepford wives. Like, we're not the Stepford sales reps. So that works if we're all droids and we're all, like, all of our ingredients are exactly the same and our parts all come from the same manufacturer. But it's not like that. And every single person, there's a story in their backdrop, and there are ideas that they have, and there are beliefs that they have, and there's self-limiting beliefs in addition to those beliefs, right? Those more general beliefs. So every person is different. Now, first, let me start with why that's a great thing. You can train everyone the same. I think you should train everyone the same, right? Processes and systems is how a company scales. That is without question. However, the foundation, the core should all be the same, but the competitive advantage comes down to the people that company has chosen to invest in. That is the only thing. So if it's company A and company B, both companies sell widgets, both companies have sales reps, sales is a relationship business, well, then it can only come down to those people that are driving revenue for the company and driving those conversations. So the beauty is that in each individual that's hired, while they might have those fundamental qualities that they're looking for, which they should, that's very smart to sort of hire with expectations and hire with intentionality. It's the personality. You hired them because of how they made you feel in the interview. That's why you hired them. So they should have an opportunity once hired to have those qualities nurtured, to, not only have those qualities nurtured, but to have sort of those weaker areas strengthened. So, I mean, like that's my take on it. But no, we're not an army of machines. We're people. And that's what makes sales so fantastic, is because you are truly like authenticity. Wait, so that's another word, right? So authenticity, and this kind of goes in with your question. What does that word even mean when you like in a culture like sales? So how can you feel safe enough to be authentic when we have these philosophies that are saying everyone should be trained, groomed, developed in the same exact way, but everyone is going to be at a different baseline in their own path, in their own journey, in their own career and skill set. So that just doesn't even make sense. But authenticity is being able to say, this is where I am right now. I don't know everything. I do need help. I don't understand why, let's say, my deals are bottlenecking at stage 4. Can you help me? Which many sales reps are afraid to sort of do that. They're afraid to ask for help. They're afraid to not know everything. They're afraid to admit error or fault or underperformance, right? And it's this culture of like fear and recognition and reward that sort of prevents us from being better leaders, where we're calling our people out, we're confronting those that are not performing as they should be. We are looking to coach our people, develop them as leaders. And then we also have sales reps that aren't chasing deals that they knew months ago was not going to close, but just the ego of saying, like, I have a Microsoft, they just can't let the deal go. So things like that.
It makes a lot of sense. What do you think the first steps are to changing this culture of fear and creating a safer psychological environment for people to admit failure and acknowledge failure so that they can improve?
So it starts with the leader. The leader is who sets the tone. The leader is who creates the climate, right? So if a leader is quick to admit mistakes, if a leader is quick to be vulnerable, if a leader is quick to admit that they don't have the answer for something, or if a leader takes the time to understand each person on their team and understand how differently we're all motivated. You apply the same carrot stick to everyone. And that's a part of it, is the leader, and then the leader actually understanding what those motivators are for the people on their team. Because facing eviction and making P Club is not the same motivation.
That's true. It's not the same motivation at all. How have you, if you have at all, and it's okay if you haven't, how have you modified, or what have you seen over the last 4 or 5 months since the pandemic started about, your approach to coaching, and how has your approach evolved in light of work from home and this heightened sense of anxiety that a lot of people have? What have you done to address that? Or has it just been, listen, the basic tools are the same, and this is another tough situation, like all situations are tough in life, and we just, use the same tools to help people?
I would say the last 4 or 5 months sort of demanded it. We all find a whole new something, right? Whether it's perspective or optimism, so in some ways, some of the basics have remained exactly the same in terms of like, you focus on the activities, you throw all of your self-esteem, all of your energy behind respecting your schedule and the activities, not the outcome. But then on the other side, I would say that the evolution, and I think of coaching as sort of like this, it's always evolving, or it should be, is just having to trust when things are uncertain, and having to trust, whether it's trust yourself, whether it's trusting the future, whether it's trusting that things will all turn out okay, but just like don't don't lose focus because of all of the storms that's coming around. Just focus on the parts that you can still control. Like, don't start getting crazy worrying about everything that's outside of your control. So those, I would say, those fundamental principles have been incredibly helpful, not only to me, but to all of my clients. Because that's what it all comes down to, right? Is controlling the controllables and not losing sleep, not freaking out, not sitting at the bar for 5 hours for the stuff that no matter how long we sit there, we're never going to have control over it anyway. It's just bad use of time. So I don't know if that answered your question, but hopefully you got something.
We provided some answer. It reminded me not to sit at the bar for 5 hours.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah. I'm going to get up now. We're almost at the end of our time together, Mykal, but I did have one question for you. We have our guests fill out a little one-pager. And one of the things that you said is the way most weekly sales meetings are held is bullshit. I want to hear more about that. Why do you think that's true, and how should they be run?
Yeah, bullshit. So bullshit. So it's actually two things. So this one-on-one sales, the weekly sales meetings are completely ridiculous, but then the one-on-one meetings are even more or equally as ridiculous. So the sales meetings, they are supposed to be a time and place where the sales team comes together. We learn from each other. We learn from successes. We learn from failures. We learn from mistakes. There is some sort of training. There is some sort of way that these reps are being developed during these meetings where it's like, all right, so I've been hearing a lot of this week. I want to focus on this. I want to focus on the first 7 seconds. What are you doing to get their attention? Whatever it is, there needs to be some sort of developmental aspect of these trainings. What happens in these trainings instead is the team comes together. They're sitting in front of a huge screen. One by one, the pipeline of each rep is put on the screen where the rep now has to explain their pipeline to the manager in front of the team. It's the same meeting every single week where it's like, well, where are we with this one? Yeah, so talk to his guy. He blah, blah, blah. This is what's happening. Yeah, so, and then the manager's like, yeah, make sure that you connect with him again next week. Make sure that blah. Yep, we'll do. And what's going on with this deal? Yeah, so this deal, it's been a couple of weeks, but I think he's on vacation. But like, it's never, and that's all it is. It's just, where are we? Is this commit or upside? There's never any actual like training. There's never any, hey, Luke, there's this thing that you did this week that I thought was actually really smart. Can you share that with the team? I pulled you to the side and I told you that I thought it was great. And I asked you, and just let the team know like about our conversation or whatever, and tell them like where you got that from or why you decided to do that day. And like, what did the client say? But like, it should be an opportunity for everyone to come together and learn and get on the same page instead of being a dog and pony show. So it's just a waste of time because you're not actually even getting real answers. Again, I was talking about the ego. And like, if I've said in a sales meeting 3 weeks ago that I have Pepsi, I spoke with Pepsi, and it's like, oh, wow, that's really cool. I don't want to tell you in front of everyone that Pepsi hasn't answered any of my calls for the last 3 weeks since that one conversation we had. So I'm just going to keep speaking in the affirmative. Oh, yeah, no, for sure. I think they're on vacation. And there's no honesty. So there's no authenticity. Then with the one-on-ones, terrible waste of opportunity and resources and really opportunity. So the whole point of the one-on-ones is it is this protected time between a leader and the seller, where this leader is there to help develop the seller, is there to like give them a voice in the privacy of this room where they have questions, they have concerns, but they're able to call them out. They're able to say things like, I know you keep saying that you had, like, you're doing all these dials, but the dials don't make sense for the numbers. So the productivity that I'm seeing based on what you're saying you're doing doesn't actually make sense. So let's talk about that. What are you actually saying on these calls? Because there has to be, the numbers tell a story. So if they're not converting, if they're making a zillion dials, but they're rarely are they converting to a first meeting, well, then we know that the problem is probably on that very first call. So why are they not coaching them? Why are they not role playing? Why are they not having a conversation? Instead, they just kind of bypass the whole thing, and they'll just say things like, what can we do to increase your pipeline? How can we make more calls? What's going on with this opportunity? And it's the same conversation week after week, without the training, without the development, without even calling them out on their bullshit. So, yes. Can you feel the passion though, Sam?
The passion is coming through the microphone. So thank you for that, Mykal. Mykal, this is the part in the show where we like to pay it forward. We like to recognize people that have influenced you, books you've read, content you've consumed, however you want to frame it, but stuff we should know about or people we should know about. Mm-hmm. When I pose it like that, who comes to mind, or what comes to mind that you think we should know about?
Oh my goodness. I would say first and foremost, Katie Sullivan, who I think she just stepped down. She was the VP of sales at Yelp for the last, 8 years or something.
Longer than that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
She's a legend. I know Katie Sullivan.
Yeah, she is a legend. And we actually share the same birthday. Oh. But January 6th. But she, I will never forget. So she, very, very early on in my Yelp career, she said to me, it was Katie, my manager, myself, and I guess it was some sort of review after training, but I had already broken all these sort of records already. And she said to me, Mykal White, she said, you are never to hold yourself to the same standard as any of these other people in this office. And I appreciated that. I appreciated that because just with those words, it kept me to a certain standard that I just, worked hard month after month after month to maintain, not for the office, but just for myself. And so she's one that she was part of why Yelp changed my life. And then the other one is, her name is Ashley Smith. She does a ton of work with African fintech, and she's just doing some really, really innovative new things that's really exciting to see. But she's also heading up the African FinTech Summit that will be taking place, I think, in October. But yeah, I call her a unicorn. I've never met anyone like her in my life.
Awesome.
And she's the founder of the Amelia Group. Yeah, no, you're very welcome.
Ashley Smith, that's her name?
Yes, Ashley F. Smith. F for forget about it.
Fair enough. Mykal, there are folks listening that probably want to reach out to you. Maybe they want to debate you. Maybe they want to become customers or clients. Mm-hmm. What's your favorite method of communication? How should people get in touch?
Well, all are welcome. And I would say email me so my name is Mykal, but it's spelled Mykal @nunda.com. So Nancy, Union, Nancy, David, Apple. Mykal at NUNDA.
NUNDA. Mykal at nunda.com.
Yes, sir.
Mykal, thanks so much for being on the show. We will talk to you on Friday for Friday Fundamentals.
Okay, looking forward to it, Sam.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Sam's Corner. I really enjoyed that conversation with Mykal White. Mykal just brings reality. She brings the truth to these conversations. And I love how she talks about just bringing your whole self, authenticity, and making sure that you're not in your salesperson speak, but that you're speaking to people like a normal human being and using normal English language. And if you have that perspective, if you have, she talks about the 3 Ps, the 3 Ps being perspective, purpose, and progress. Why are we here? Purpose, having the right perspective on what you're doing and how you're doing it, and making sure that you're bringing your whole authentic self, and then making sure that you're making progress on every call and every interaction. I think those ideas are so important. And I think this idea, the thing that she mentioned is that, this idea of authenticity in sales culture is the great deception, because space isn't created for people to be authentic when everyone's being held to the same standard and assumed to have the same motivation. So again, to be authentic, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. And you can't be authentic if everybody's reading from a script and speaking like robots. So how do we create an environment where people really can bring their whole selves? Now, I will say as an asterisk to that, what does all of this mean, your whole self? Does it mean that, like, if you have a mohawk, you shouldn't shave your mohawk? I guess that's fine. It depends, I guess, if it's phone sales or not. If your whole self swears all the time, does that mean that's okay? I think some of these phrases and some of these ideas, I just get turned around thinking about what exactly they mean, because the language sounds kind of fanciful, but I'm not quite sure. I've always sort of brought my whole self. I haven't said everything that ever entered my mind when it entered my mind at work, but it's also just called being an adult. So, of course, I support bringing your whole self to work, but I wouldn't know how to do anything else. It's just, factually, self-evidently true. Anyway, that's a diversion. That's neither hither nor yon, as my English teacher, Mrs. Monroe, used to say. But the point is this. We want to thank our two sponsors for bringing you this episode. The first is Sapper Consulting. With Reggie, they are using artificial intelligence to create entire outbound, inbound, and even follow-up sales campaigns faster so you can get more meetings and make more money. Go to go.regie.io with 1G, REGIE.io. Second sponsor is Outreach, the #1 sales engagement platform. Go to outreach.io to learn more about Outreach if you haven't heard about them already. If you want to reach out to me, sam@revenuecollective.com. If you want to bring your whole self to Revenue Collective, go to revenuecollective.com, click apply now. We cannot wait to have you join the community. We think we are the future of professional education. How else are you going to learn in the modern world besides a community of your peers, vetted and curated so that you're talking to people with real expertise that help you get where you want to go in your career? That's our mission. That's what we're working on. I'll talk to you next time, my friends.